All right, we have had the Hyperlite Mountain Gear Ultamid 2 for over 7 years at this point, and we just want to talk about our experience with it. This has been our go-to tent for that entire time. Overall, we have been very happy with it, but there are some things that we would change and some things that make setting up tenting a little complicated. This is a DCF tent, so it's pretty lightweight. We do use the insert that's got the bathtub and the bug netting pretty much all the time because up here in Washington we got bugs all the time. It's either buggy or it's rainy. You get both. So it does add weight to the entire setup. So the entire setup is like 2.5 pounds with the insert and the outer portion here. Now, probably the number one thing that we absolutely love about this tent is just how roomy it is. We're both short people. I'm 5'6", she's 5'3"-ish, and as you can see standing next to it, the tent is basically taller than us, so when we're inside we can almost stand up if we wanted to. And for us, being little people as well, our trekking poles go right down the center, and that's what's keeping it supported right there in the center. And both of us, even though this is a two-person tent, we both fit onto one side of the tent for sleeping purposes. And that gives us so much space on the inside for our gear, and if we're in bad weather or anything like that, to get out of the weather and have room to kind of sprawl out. Now this tent, you can use it in all 4 seasons. We definitely have. It has all of these different guy out points all over the tent that if you fully utilize those with guy lines, this thing is basically bomb proof. We've had it in 70-mile-an-hour winds and it's held up totally fine as long as you have everything staked down. And even in this little bit of snow that we have, in some of these corners, I just have very tiny dead man anchors and it's still holding up pretty well. Now, if we were staying here long term, I would be guying things out a lot better to make it more stable. Just for a simple setup like this, you got the 4 corners staked out and you're pretty much good to go. Now, looking on the inside, coming around this way, as you can see, this is what I meant with the insert. There is a bug netting. There is a nice tall bathtub here. And so we've never had issues whatsoever with rain popping in, even on when it's absolutely downpouring. We've never had issues with that. And like I said, when you have this all stretched out, then you can fit 2 people. Even with regular size sleeping pads, you can fit 2 people on one side. You do roll up onto the edge just a little tiny bit, but it's not too bad. And then that gives you that entire side over there. So if I was to crawl in here, and you can see just how much room there is. Now, tents like this, you don't have tent poles, you just use your trekking poles. So in this case, we use 2 trekking poles. We latch them together, goes right up the center, and then that gives you all the support that you need. Like I said, you can basically, if you're at our height, you can almost stand up in here, but even if you're up on your knees, you have quite a bit of headroom in here as well. Now, one of the things that I could totally see getting changed to make this a little lighter is somehow integrating the bug netting and the bathtub directly into the outer portion, because then if it's connected down lower, then you would be able to get rid of a lot of this material and it would shave off quite a bit of weight. But still at 2.5 pounds, it's really not that heavy of a tent compared to other tents out there. But it's also not the lightest. There are a lot lighter tents coming out onto the market now compared to 7 years ago as well.
All right, so getting into the cons and things that we would love to change about the tent is, for me, I sleep closest to the edge of the lining. And so the way that it's sloped is just enough that this netting is in my face. And even if we try adjusting, you know, the pitch and everything, with 2 people squeezed onto this side, it's just enough where I'm having to squeeze into BRYAN a little bit, and he's up against the pole already. So it's a little bit of a workaround that we figured out. But a lot of times I'll end up like sliding my body down a little bit, which I'm able to do because I'm only 5'3". But if someone's 5'8" and above, that's not really an option because you're already using your space in the tent. So that's one of the things that we've definitely had issues with. That's also a unique experience for us because we are putting ourselves on one side, whereas typically most people, you'd have one person on each side of the post. Yep. So after 7 years of using this tent faithfully, it's gotten us through a lot of trips. As you can tell, it is not near as white as the snow anymore. The zipper has started to fail. So even with cleaning the zipper, which happens over time, you do need to take care of your zippers, very important. With this tent in particular, it's getting worn enough that our zipper isn't starting to zip all the way on the outside. So we're good, and then it starts splitting. So that's been a major split point, and then it'll split further down sometimes too. Yep. So right now it doesn't want to stick at all. So that's one thing that's also started to happen.
Now there's the potential that I could take some pliers to this and squeeze it. It might have loosened up after all these years, and that might fix this problem. I haven't gotten to it to see, but pretty much that's the only fail point that we have had in the 7 years that we've had it, except this isn't really on the tent. If you have cats and you set this up outside, for some reason, they think that they need to kill it. And you probably can't see it, but we do have some little marks where we've had to patch because our cats will go like sprint straight at it and dive at it with claws out and put claws straight through it. But other than that, with all the trips we've done, it has held up very well.
Especially with how wet it gets in this state, we've been pretty fortunate that this tent was really well designed, that we haven't had any issues with condensation. So condensation is definitely well thought out with this model. You've got, you know, the buffer room between the two layers, and you've got venting up here as well that you can adjust. So that is another pro to the tent.
Now, even though we've had this for seven and a half years, there is some newer stuff coming onto the market, and we do have a different tent coming for the 2024 season, and we're excited to test it out and share it with you when it gets here. But for now, this is still our #1 go-to tent, unless that zipper doesn't get fixed, and then this tent will not be #1. Because it's no longer waterproof. But sometimes we can get it to work, other times it does that. And if it's windy, it'll split too. We've had lots of other tents and none of them have lasted this long. And this, for being just a DCF tarp and then an insert, very impressed with the longevity of it and the stability of it and how well it handles if you have it pitched correctly. So if you are interested in a tent like this, go ahead. We have links down in the description below. You can go through those. It does help the channel out without costing you anything extra. Hopefully you enjoyed this 7-year review of the Ultamid 2 tent from Hyperlite, and soon you will be seeing more on other tents that we have.